People always ask why anyone would volunteer for an isolation experiment. They imagine a cash prize or bragging rights, some flimsy reason to risk your sanity. For me, it was desperation. Rent overdue, a job on the line, and an email promising $25,000 for 30 days in a controlled environment. A sealed bunker, no light, minimal sound, just me and my thoughts. It sounded easy. I'd always thought I was good at being alone. The facility was deep in the mountains. 2 men in gray uniforms drove me there in a van with blacked-out windows. They didn't talk. When we arrived, the air was thinner, colder. A squat concrete structure squatted among the pines like something left over from a forgotten war. A woman in a lab coat handed me a waiver thick enough to choke a filing cabinet. She didn't smile once. At the bottom, in bold, was a single line. In prolonged darkness, the mind may create its own stimuli. These manifestations are not our responsibility. I signed anyway. Inside the bunker, they showed me a bare room, cot, table, chair, water tank, and boxers of nutrient bars. A camera in the corner blinked red always. Watching. 30 days, the woman said. If you complete it, you're paid in full. If you quit, you forfeit everything. She handed me a heavy blindfold. The lights go out once we close the door. You won't see a thing. The door shut with a final, metallic clang. Then darkness. Absolute suffocating darkness. The first hours were fine. I hummed songs to myself, counted heartbeats, imagined skylines and city lights. Darkness wasn't so bad when you knew there was a world outside. But time dissolved quickly. Without light, without clocks, minutes stretched into hours, or maybe hours shrank into minutes. Hunger and thirst became my only markers. By what I guessed was day 3, I'd developed a routine. Eat 2 bars, drink some water, pace the room, talk to the walls. My voice sounded smaller than I expected, swallowed by the dark. It was on what I thought was day 5 that I heard it, a faint shuffer. At first, I thought it was me my own, foot brushing the floor. But I was sitting on the cot, completely still. I whispered, "Hello." Silence. I laughed nervously. Brain tricks. Cool. Love that. But the sound came again closer this time. Something brushed my ankle. Light pressure. A deliberate touch. I jerked back, slamming against the wall. My heart thundered so loud I could taste it in my throat. "Hello," my voice cracked. No answer. I tried to rationalize. Maybe a mouse had slipped in. Maybe I'd kicked something I didn't remember leaving on the floor. But the room was sealed. Later hours, days, I began hearing breathing that wasn't mine. A slow inhale. An even slower exhale. Always just far enough away that I couldn't pinpoint it. I pressed my back to the wall, whispering to myself, "Not real. Just the dark playing tricks." But the dark didn't usually whisper back. That first time, It was so soft, I wasn't sure it happened at all. A single word, stretched and broken. Stay. I froze. The air felt heavier, the walls somehow closer. I clenched my fists until my nails dug crescents into my palms. No, I whispered. You're not real. The whisper came again, this time directly beside my ear. Longer. I screamed, loud enough to hurt my own ears in the small room. My voice bounced back at me, thin and pitiful, and then the breathing stopped. By the time I calmed down, I realized I couldn't hear the camera anymore. The faint mechanical hum I'd been aware of since entering the subtle buzz of its movement was gone. I groped toward the corner where I thought the camera was mounted. My fingers found cold metal. No blink of red. No reassurance. In the darkness, I whispered, "They're still watching, right?" Silence. Something about that silence was worse than any whisper. I returned to the cot, curled up, and tried to sleep, but I couldn't shake the feeling of another presence in the room, breathing, watching, waiting. When I woke, if I ever truly slept, the cot felt wrong. The air smelled faintly of earth, damp and raw, like a cave, and from somewhere below, far below, came the faintest echo of footsteps. When I woke, maybe I had never really slept. The air was heavier. The darkness felt thicker, like velvet draped over my face. My first thought was that I had rolled off the cot, because the floor beneath me felt uneven, gritty like dirt instead of concrete. But when I reached out, the cot was still there, except it was on the wrong side. I sat up slowly, hands shaking. Okay. This is sleep deprivation, hallucinations. Just part of the experiment. The echo of my voice didn't sound right. It was too deep, too stretched, like the room had expanded overnight. That was when I heard the first other voice. It was a woman's whisper, faint, almost friendly. Left. I whipped my head toward the sound, though there was no left, any more lonely, infinite dark. A second voice, male, overlapped hers, rougher, impatient. "Behind you." I spun around so fast I stumbled and slammed my shoulder into the wall. At least I thought it was the wall. The surface felt warm for a second, like flesh. "No," I said aloud, my voice trembling. "You're not real. You're not real." A laugh answered Mia. Child's laugh, high-pitched and echoing. It repeated, looping in a broken pattern, like an audio file skipping. I groped for my water jug and found it several feet farther away than where I'd left it. My heart thudded painfully as I crawled toward it. My hands found not the jug, but something soft fabric, a sleeve, a cold hand. I yelped and scrambled back, knocking over the table. The crash reverberated, and for a moment everything was still. Then the breathing began again unlee. Now it wasn't one set of lungs. It was several slow, measured breaths circling me from every side. "Stop," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Please, stop." The woman's voice returned, closer now. "You wanted this." The man's voice followed, overlapping. "You signed the waiver." I felt something brush my hair alight. Deliberate touch. I lashed out with my fist, hitting only air. I decided to test my sanity. I crawled to the door, found the heavy steel handle, and yanked. It didn't budge. I pounded on it, screaming. My voice felt swallowed by the dark. Somewhere behind me, a new sound began. A faint, rhythmic tapping. Tap, 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 tap. Like fingernails on wood. I turned, and the sound stopped. I turned back to the door. Tap, tap. I slammed my palms against the metal until they ached. "Let me out." Silence. Then a chorus of whispers all around me. 30 days. Stay longer. You are not alone. The voices overlapped, some too fast to understand, some so faint I thought they were inside my skull. I backed toward what I hoped was the cot, needing an anchor. My foot hit something small and metallic. When I crouched to pick it up, my fingers traced a shape that shouldn't exist. A tiny key. But the bunker had no locks. At least none I had seen. As I turned it over in my hand, the child's laugh returned closer, sharper. I whispered into the dark, "What does it open?" A voice, directly behind my ear, whispered back, "Down." The floor beneath me seemed to breathe. I crouched, pressed my palm flat against the ground. It pulsed once, like a heartbeat, then again, stronger. The walls began to creak, as if the whole bunker shifted slightly, settling into a new shape. "Hallucination," I told myself, even as my chest tightened. Just hallucination. But the darkness didn't feel like an absence of light anymore. It felt like a presence or living thing pressing against my skin. Somewhere far below, a door slammed, and from the depths of that impossible space, a low, guttural voice rolled upward. "We're coming up." I curled onto the cot, clutching the key, and tried not to breathe. The key dug into my palm all through what might have been another day or Another hour. In the dark, time was a cruel, elastic thing. I could no longer tell if I was awake or slipping through layers of half-formed dreams. But the heartbeat beneath the floor didn't stop. It kept a slow, dreadful rhythm under my cot, a reminder that whatever I was on, it wasn't concrete anymore. I told myself that the facility staff had planned this, that they were testing sensory perception, maybe even trick flooring to unnerve me, but that thought rang hollow when the air began to move like a faint breeze swirling through a sealed room. Something shifted under my cot, a subtle ripple that made my stomach turn. Then a small sound. Click. It came from the key in my fist, as if some invisible lock had just accepted it. Hello. My voice felt too loud. The dark swallowed it whole. No answer. Only the deep groan of the room stretching. I stood at least. I stood and took a step. My foot didn't find solid ground. It kept going, past where the floor should have been. Panic shot through me. I flailed, grasped for anything, and caught the edge of the cot before I could tumble. I crouched low, sweeping my hand forward. The floor was gone. In its place was nothing but cold, still air. I crawled on my hands and knees, testing the ground. The boundaries had changed. The room had expanded. Or the table, the chair, even the walls, they weren't where they should have been. It was as though the bunker had unfolded into an impossible space. Then came the whispers, more of them, overlapping and circling me like vultures. Down below. Welcome. You opened it. The key vibrated slightly in my hand, humming with a faint, metallic tremor. I felt its tip point downward, as if pulled by something below. The heartbeat under the floor quickened. I shuffled backward, but the cot was no longer behind me. I reached out for the door, but the wall wasn't there. Every direction was empty. Even the air felt wrong, warmer, thicker, with a faint smell of wet earth. Then, without warning, the ground beneath me vanished completely. I fell. The drop wasn't long, but the landing knocked the breath from my lungs. I lay there, stunned, palms pressed to damp soil. Soil. The bunker had been concrete, sterile yet here I was, surrounded by dirt that smelled ancient, like something buried deep in the earth for centuries. In the distance, if distance even meant anything, now came a scraping noise, slow, deliberate, like claws raking across stone. I got to my knees, clutching the key like a weapon. "This isn't real," I whispered. "This isn't." A soft giggle cut me off. It was the child's laugh again, distorted, echoing off unseen walls. Then, closer, the woman's voice murmured, "It's real enough." Shapes shifted in the darkness, shapes I couldn't truly see but could feel. Tall, thin forms moving just beyond reach. They made no sound except the occasional breath that wasn't mine. I reached out, blind, and touched something smooth and curved like a stone archway. My fingers traced symbols etched into the surface. Spirals, eyes, and an unfamiliar sigil that seemed to move under my touch. He fit perfectly into a small hole in the center. Against my better judgment, I turned it. A sound like cracking ice thundered through the void. A seam of pale, sickly light split the darkness ahead. The archway opened not outward, but inward, folding space around it. The light revealed nothing concrete, only outlines of things that should not exist. Too many limbs, too many eyes, a mouth that seemed to swallow its own edges. The whispers rose into a chorus. "Come closer. We've been waiting." I stepped back, shaking. My heel caught on a root or a bone. I couldn't tell which, and I nearly fell again. From the rift of light, a voice deeper than the earth itself rolled forward, vibrating through my bones. 30 days is just the start. The ground trembled, soil cascaded around me, and the archway widened. Something enormous moved in the dark, circling just outside the edge of the faint glow. I saw only hints, a glint of wet teeth, a ripple of flesh like stretched leather. I didn't wait to see more. I turned and ran if running was even possible without light or direction. My feet struck uneven ground. Roots or fingers seemed to grab at my ankles. The whispers chased me, multiplying. No escape. "You're ours now." Deeper, deeper. At one point, I swear a hand brushed my back, long skeletal fingers trailing across my shirt. I stumbled, caught myself, and kept going until my lungs burned. Finally, my hands struck cold steel. A wall! The bunker wall. I collapsed against it, gasping. The heartbeat beneath the floor had followed me. A pit pulsed faintly through the metal. Somewhere beyond that wall, something dragged itself closer. My palms flattened against the cold steel, searching for the door. A seam, anything familiar. The metal felt wrong, soft in places, pulsing faintly beneath my touch, like it was drawing breath. Each inhale made the wall swell outward. Each exhale sucked the air tight against my skin. I whispered to the darkness, desperate to anchor myself. "This is a trick. They're testing me. It's all fake." The wall exhaled again, longer this time, and with that breath came a smell I will never forget. Coppery, damp, and unmistakably alive. Then a new sound began, a wet, dragging noise, starting far off and creeping closer. It was punctuated by an irregular scrape, like claws or nails skittering over steel. I pressed my ear to the wall. A low vibration shuddered through the metal. Something on the other side whispered a single word, guttural and low. Closer. I recoiled so fast I nearly fell backward. My elbow struck something behind me, a shape that had not been there before. I reached out, fingers trembling, and touched fabric. A sleeve, an arm. Someone or something was standing inches away. I froze, too afraid even to breathe. The arm shifted, The hand rose slowly until a cold fingertip pressed against my lips. A voice, new one, neither male nor female, soft as silk, whispered directly into my ear. You will wake them. I bolted. My shoulder slammed into another wall, except now the wall was warm and slick, like muscle. The bunker's geometry had dissolved entirely. The whispers followed, overlapping, growing louder. Wake them. Run. No. Escape. A dim pulse of light flickered ahead. Desperate, I staggered toward it, only to realize it wasn't light at all. It was the faint phosphorescent glow of writing smeared across the walls. I traced a letter with my finger. It spelled my name. Dozens of repetitions. My name scrawled again and again, trailing off into illegible marks. Behind me, the dragging sound quickened. The thing was moving faster. I stumbled into what felt like a hallway long, narrow, impossibly twisting. My hands skimmed the walls as I ran, and every few feet they pulsed under my touch, their breathing syncing with mine. The corridor branched. One path whispered, "Stay," while the other hissed, "Freedom," in a broken, childlike voice. Against all logic, I followed the hiss. The hall narrowed until I could only crawl. The air grew hotter, and a rhythmic pounding began, like a massive heartbeat echoing through the walls. I crawled faster, ignoring the sharp stones slicing my palms. A breath of cold air kissed my face, a hidden exit. I surged forward. Instead of a doorway, I found a gaping hole in the floor. A faint, distorted voice rose from the depths, begging, "Please, stay still." The plea was so broken, so human, that for a heartbeat I almost listened. Then a wet hand shot out of the hole, fingers clawing for my ankle. I kicked hard, felt it slip away, and scrambled back. The hole sealed itself with a sound like cracking bone. I leaned against the wall, shaking uncontrollably. I whispered, "This isn't happening," over and over. But the darkness answered with a chorus of mocking laughter. The laughter changed, stretching, warping, until it became a single deep voice, slow and deliberate. 30 days. Remember, you're only halfway. Suddenly, a strip of dim red light appeared ahead a door frame. I staggered toward it. The frame opened into the original room. Cat, table, chair, all perfectly in place, as though none of it had moved. The camera light blinked red again. Steady, almost cheerful, I crawled onto the cot, clutching the key, and forced my breathing to slow. Clutching the key, they were still pulsing faintly, in time with my heart. From somewhere deep beneath me, the dragging sound resumed. I woke, if you can call it waking too. Silence so complete it felt staged. For a moment I convinced myself it was over, that the walls were still, that the nightmare had been the product of a sleep-starved brain. Then the cot exhaled beneath me. I shot upright, clutching the key. My pulse thundered against my ribs. The red blink of the camera across the room was gone again. A soft click echoed through the dark, followed by the sound of a lock turning. The air shifted. A faint draft brushed my face. Somewhere nearby, a door had opened. A weak, gray light spilled through a thin seam ahead, almost dazzling after so long in darkness. I stumbled toward it, half laughing, half sobbing. Finally, I whispered, "It's over." But the moment I stepped into the light, the ground flexed under my foot like muscle. The light brightened unnaturally fast white-hot, searing and then folded inward, collapsing into a jagged tunnel of impossible angles. The whispers returned all at once, a dozen, 100 voices. Not daylight. Wrong world. Stay. I tried to retreat, but the way behind me had sealed. The corridor twisted, bending gravity, pulling me forward. The heartbeat that had haunted me for days now filled the air, deep and thunderous. Shapes emerged at the edges of the blinding glow. Human outlines too thin, too tall, frozen mid-motion, like statues. As I passed, their heads turned ever so slightly to follow me. One of them, the smallest, child's eyes whispered, "You let us out?" The tunnel opened into an enormous cavern bathed in that pale, wrong light. The air shimmered like heat haze. Carved into the walls were thousands of names, some scratched so deeply the rock bled dust. My own name pulsed faintly among them, freshly carved. In the center of the cavern waited the source of the heartbeat, a colossal shape embedded in the stone. It had no defined form, only shifting sasasa of limbs, a maw that opened and closed without sound. As it breathed, the walls of the cavern contracted and expanded, as if the entire space were part of its body. I realized then, the bunker wasn't just a building. It was a shell, a rib cage. I had been living inside something alive. The voices merged into a single, distorted plea. "Stay still. Don't wake it." My legs trembled, but I froze. The creature's surface rippled. A fragment of the ceiling crumbled, and the vibration seemed to rouse it further. Its maw twitched open, revealing not teeth but doorways, countless. Doorways to places I couldn't comprehend. City streets I'd known, a childhood bedroom, forests under alien skies. A new voice, a calm, familiar baritone spoke behind me. It was my own. "Step through. One of them leads home." I turned, but there was no one there, only the echo of my words chasing themselves around the cavern. The heartbeat grew erratic. The walls flexed violently. Somewhere, alarms began to wail shrill. Electronic. Impossible inside this place. The creature stirred. Its many mouths whispered in unison, desperate now, "Stay, or it follows." I gripped the key so tightly it cut into my palm. "I can't stay," I whispered. "I won't." "I chose a doorway, the one that looked least familiar on." Ran. I stumbled through blinding light and into a room. A hospital room. Maybe white walls, beeping monitors. Sunlight streamed through a window. For a blissful second, Relief flooded me. Then I noticed the window's view. Not trees or sky, but the same cavernous heartbeat, pulsing faintly beyond the glass. The sunlight flickered static crawling along its edges, and from the corner of the room where the shadows pooled unnaturally deep, a whisper coiled around my ear. 30 days was only the invitation. The monitor beside the bed blinked once, then displayed my name, followed by the words, Day 1. The heartbeat began again. Louder, closer. Darkness seeped across the walls, swallowing the light. And then, from somewhere far below, the dragging sound started up once more.